So you're interested in graphic design, or you're about to study it, or maybe you're just someone working with graphic designer, you just want to impress them with your knowledge. Look no further, my friend, because I have for you 5 designer tips for non-designers. From design basic to printing to awful truth about your display that will make you a slightly less interesting person at parties. You ready? Let's go! Number 1. PDF isn't vector graphics. You probably heard this sentence from designers before. We're gonna edit your logo in vector. And even after 5 emailed PDFs, they kept asking you for proper vector graphics. And you just couldn't understand. I don't get it. I gave you PDF you asked for. What else do you want from me? Leave me alone. I understand. It's not your job to understand every aspect of graphic design, so I'll help you with that. Firstly, we must ask yourself, what does PDF actually stand for? It stands for Portable Document Format, and it's supposed to be one of the best ways to share and print your files. That's it. It has no marital bond to vector graphics to not get frisky outside its marriage. It's not even an open relationship. It's just a sad, lonely data format. Yes, you can save your vector graphics in PDF and be perfectly happy with it. You know what else can you save in PDF? Bitmap graphics. But what's a bitmap graphic, you might ask? In design language, bitmap graphics might be treated as the exact opposite of vector graphics. The easiest way to imagine the difference is to imagine the bitmap as a bunch of colored pixels. Each pixel has information of a location and a color it's supposed to represent. And if you set a certain number of those pixels in a certain order and in a certain color, you'll get a picture like this. Or like this. Or even like this. You get it? Because you're watching a bunch of moving pixels? What about the vector graphics? This might be a bit confusing. It's graphics. But also isn't. It's actually an instruction how to make graphics using mathematical formulas. You want red circles in the middle of the artboard? Here are the coordinates of all the points you need and all the formulas to connect that. And make it red. You want an IKEA manual? Remember the red circle? It's like that, but with a bit more instructions. Of course, as designers usually don't create vector graphics by writing formulas. We use dedicated graphic softwares to draw on it and let the software write the optimal code. So why is it important to use vector graphics instead of bitmap in certain designs? Number 1. Due to its nature, by using instruction instead of fixed information, it's way easier to enlarge it or minimize it. When a large vector logo might look like this, with nice clean edges, well, bitmap logo might look like this, like it's designed with bread knife. Number 2. Due to the same reason, might take just a fraction of a disk capacity compared to bitmap. And number 3, it's easier to edit. If you save your bitmap graphics without a source file, that's most likely it. You can't really change much or add to it in some clever way or anything else. But in vector graphics, most of the time you don't even need a source file. Not that we know which one is actually a source file, am I right, fellas? So remember, if you're not sure about your PDF, check for clean edges, see the size of a file, or try to edit it. Number 2. Know your colors. You might be surprised, but there are many ways to show color and they are not even compatible with each other. You'll probably at least once in your lifetime heard about the RGB. It stands for red, green and blue. And it's a color model which you're using to watch me right now. And it's basically in every color display you can find. Your TV, computer screen, your smartphone, Game Boy, your car dashboard display, a smartwatch, even on smart fridges. But there is one problem with it. You can't use RGB to print on paper. Why? Because of its nature. RGB was created to illuminate a black screen with a tiny fraction of a screen pixel that emits red, green and blue in such a ratio that creates a new color. If it emits more red and blue and less of a green, the pixel will look more pink or purple. And if you turn all the colors to the max, you're gonna get a white pixel. And if you turn all the colors way back down, you're gonna get a black. Now, as I said, RGB can't be used for printing. You can't use pixel in your paper to show a color. You're gonna have to cover it with one. Here comes CMYK. It sounds so better in our language. CMYK. It just rolls out the tongue. CMYK. Anyway, CMYK, also known as the exact opposite of the RGB, and it stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and key, also known as black. Long story. This color system was created over 100 years ago to print as many colors as possible. Interestingly, It uses a kinda similar system to mix colors as RGB, but instead of pixels it uses the whole page to cover it with tiny dots in different sizes, also known as raster. After printing rasters in all full colors, you optically create a new color that varies by changing the sizes of those dots. The larger are dots of magenta and yellow, the more red tones you get. The larger are cyan and yellow dots, the more greenish you get. It's like when you were mixing your watercolors when you were a kid, but with tiny dots on huge machines, 5 to 10,000 times an hour. I'll quickly mention just another color mixing system. You all probably heard something like this. For this logo we use 901C and 256C. What? You mean blue and purple? Speak American! Of course I'm talking about the good old Pantone color system, or Pantone matching system, or PMS short. I know what you're thinking right now. Bad. Stop it. Pantone color system was created by the same name company from New Jersey and is a standardized color reproduction system. By knowing a code of a color from that standard you want to print, you can set it to different printers all over the world and be sure you're gonna get the exact color printed. The main shortcoming of a system is it has quite limited number of colors it can be mixed, which is much lower compared to CMYK or even lower to RGB. So remember, if you're talking about display designs like for social media or apps, you want to think in RGB. If you want to print on paper, then you want to go with CMYK. And if you really want to have the exact color every time, you should go with Pantone. Number 3. Print smarter, not harder. So you have a job to print. Here are 3 types of printing machines. What do they have in common? All of them can print what you want, but one of them is cheaper or faster, or can print on materials the other ones can't. It depends on exactly what you want to print. If you want to print, let's say, 200 business cards with a simple design on a plain paper, you probably don't want to spend too much of them, right? In that case, you might be looking for a digital printing. This type of printing is a great way to print a small batch or just one print for pretty cheap, because it's easy to set and the most costs go for paper or ink. But you decided to print a magazine, 3000 pieces exactly, or exemplar, if I may. You can run it to digital press, but you're gonna pay like a lot. In that case, you want something like offset printing. Offset has the expensive and complicated preparation where the printer has to produce printing plates in all 4 colors. Remember the CMYK I told you before? For 1 or more pages at the same time. Number depends on the size of plates or a number of pages you want to print. But as soon as we start rolling, get it? Because offset printers have rollers and cylinders. But as soon as we start rolling to this long boy of a printing machine, the cost per copy plummets exponentially. You already know how to print fast in small numbers or cost efficient in large quantities. But what about if you want something special? What about you want to print your logo large and on t-shirts? Well, my friend, 2 words. Screen printing. It's actually putting a big ass strainer, the screen, on the surface you want to print it and rubbing ink through it. Actually, it's much more delicate than this, and today can be made by hand or computerized and can be used on a large number of different surfaces. It's one of those special techniques that gives a human touch to prints, and it's quite loved by artist community. There are many other types of printing like flexography, pad printing, letterpress, hot foil stamping, and so on. I might make another video just about them, but for now I think it's enough. So now you know a little bit about printing presses. Congrats! Number 4. Better resolutions are for New Year's. I can't tell you how many times I received a small photo that the client wanted to stretch all over the poster, just because on their display it looked perfectly fine. Thank God you're here. I just spent all those years studying and building my career. What do I know? To achieve the best results in printing or generating digital design, you need to understand the importance of resolution. Resolution can be similarly as it happens with colors split into 2 categories: print resolution and display resolution. Print resolution is simply just a detail in a printed image. The higher the resolution, the higher the detail. Today we're measuring resolution by how many dots created by a press machine can be in 1 inch, more known as dots per inch, or DPI. The usual standard for small prints is about 300 DPI, while large prints like billboards are usually printed in 30 DPI, because they are meant to be observed by a much greater distance. Many times when printing in large quantities, The detail in an image is not the top priority, which can be a reason to lower the resolution. For instance, offset printing presses are a lot of times set to print from 150 to 180 dpi. But if you're planning to print art pieces or high quality photos, or you're about to present your design to a board of directors, then it's recommended to print in high resolution like 600 or even 1200 dpi. Now let's not forget about display resolution. Apart from being a level of detail, it also has a job of dimension setting. It tells you at what dimension you can expect the image to be presented in your display. It can also tell you what kind of a level of detail shows your screen. You probably heard before about the 1080p or 4K or the good old potato camera 360p. There's also known measurement for display resolution similar to print resolution, called pixels per inch or PPI. Well, in this case, instead of dots made by machine, we use pixels in a display. And there are many displays in many sizes, but huge majority of them use the same standard of 72 PPI in resolutions like 1920 x 1080, also known as 1080p or Full HD, or 2560 x 1440, known as 4040p or Quad HD, or more and more mainstream 3840 x 2160, known as 4K or Ultra HD. Of course, there's also like Apple Retina display that really tightens the resolution on extreme level, but doesn't seem to be pretty applicable right now. Now you probably noticed that the display resolution is in majority of the time much smaller than a print resolution, and no one wants a pretty photo in 72 ppi that look on paper something like this. Number 5. Your display most likely lies to you. But display, how could you do this to me? I thought we were bros. How can you show me yellow when it's clearly light green? Don't worry, it's not display's fault. It's yours, technically, for buying it. I'll explain. Have you ever checked the same picture on your laptop and your phone at the same time and noticed a difference in color tones? That's probably because those displays were made by different companies with different technologies and are housing different display software with different settings. There are many causes that show your display wrong colors, but the main one is usually money, or lack of it actually. Good displays are not cheap. Why are iPhones so expensive? Yeah, they're overpriced, but they're also fitted with the best cameras, best display and best software in the market. Same goes for laptops. They're actual laptops for photo and video editing, and they are good. And don't even let me start with PC displays, because I can't afford it. But how to know which display is good and which one is just for selfies? There are measurable standards to tell if your display shows the correct color or it's totally out, like sRGB, Adobe RGB, NTSC and so on. And there's also one important measurement you need to know, and it's called delta E. Delta E is measured by sensitive optical devices, and it tells you the difference of a color on your display and the same color on a device's standard color chart. The difference is then translated to a chart from 0 to 100, where everything below 1 is not perceptible by a human eye and basically impossible to get. Between 1 and 2 is barely to spot, and so is a sweet spot for a good display. Between 2 and 10 is getting notable, and here is the majority of the displays. Between 11 and 49 is fix your colors now, and everything above 50 is you're colorblind. So by looking at the delta E, you can determine the accuracy of display's color. And if you don't own some pretty expensive device, then it's probably not that accurate. Sorry. But there are solutions for that. You can get yourself a display calibration tool, which sets your display through software. You can use many of DIY by my own eagle eye, yes it rhymes, calibration apps and set it by yourself. Or you can buy an old tube display that amazingly has better colors than today LCDs and LEDs. You can also just print your design on a well-calibrated machine and check it on paper. But remember, RGB CMYK difference. Or you can just buy a professional display for a fraction of a Bitcoin. So here you are, 5 tips to know more about important things that influence graphic design. Next time you meet graphic designer, tell him about a thing or two you have just learned, and maybe you'll become good buddies. You never know. Have a good one. Bye. The pixel will look more pink or purple. Purple.